Before she became the wife of Machine Gun Kelly, Kathryn Kelly had already lived several different lives. She married at 14, became a mother at 15, buried her third husband, traveled with bootleggers, and learned how early money could open doors in the criminal underworld. By the time she met George Kelly, she was not an innocent woman being introduced to crime by a dangerous man. She already knew the roads, the speakeasies, and the people who made their living outside the law. How did a girl born Lera Cleo Brooks become one of the most notorious women of the Great Depression era underworld? Kathryn was born Lera Cleo Brooks in Tupelo, Mississippi, on March 18, 1904. When she was 6, her family moved to Texas, where her parents operated boarding houses and worked in grocery stores. Kathryn enjoyed music and learned to play the piano, but she found public school boring. After completing the 8th grade, she left school and soon met 17-year-old Lonnie Fry, whose family owned a farm near Shawnee, Oklahoma. On November 29, 1918, 14-year-old Kathryn married Lonnie in Asher, Oklahoma. Their daughter, Pauline Elizabeth, was born the following June. Kathryn was only 15 years old, and she was already a wife and a mother. The marriage lasted approximately 2.5 years. After the divorce, Kathryn and Pauline returned to live with her parents. 16 months later, Kathryn married Lenny Elbert Brewer. That marriage also ended in divorce in 1924. By the age of 20, Kathryn had already been married and divorced twice. In March 1927, 23-year-old Kathryn married her third husband, Charles Thorne. Thorne owned the American Cafe in Coleman, Texas, and had possessed more than 150 acres of ranch land. He also made money transporting illegal alcohol. For Kathryn, the marriage offered her something earlier life had not: money, travel, excitement, and access to expensive jewelry and clothing. Kathryn wanted more than the quiet life available to her in her small town Texas. She enjoyed fine hotels, stylish clothing, jewelry, automobiles, and the attention that came with it. She also discovered that she enjoyed the excitement of transporting illegal liquor. Kathryn began accompanying Thorne on his bootlegging runs. Together they traveled between towns, speakeasies, and distribution points. Some journeys reportedly took them as far as Canada, where grain alcohol was acquired before being transported south and converted into different kinds of illegal liquor. The work was dangerous, but it was profitable. It also gave Kathryn the feeling that she was escaping the ordinary life that had once bored her. She recognized, however, that the bootlegging world was not a great place for her daughter. Kathryn left Pauline in the care of her mother, Ora, while she continued traveling with Thorne. Kathryn wanted excitement and independence, but pursuing that life meant leaving motherhood and domestic stability behind. Kathryn and Thorne's marriage became increasingly volatile. Both accused one another of flirting with customers at the cafe. Kathryn suspected her husband of being unfaithful, and people around Coleman reportedly heard her threatening to kill him if she ever caught him cheating. Kathryn later claimed that Thorne also threatened her, especially while drinking. She described him as a heavy drinker who could consume enormous amounts of whiskey. On April 29, 1928, after drinking throughout the day, Thorne reportedly pointed his pistol at Kathryn and announced that he intended to kill her. Exhausted by the argument, she told him to just go ahead. Instead, Thorne put the weapon away. Kathryn went into the kitchen to wash the dinner dishes. A short time later, she heard a gunshot. She found Thorne on the bedroom floor with a wound to his head. He remained alive long enough to be transported to a hospital but died shortly after midnight. Authorities record a suicide note. Thorne stated that no one would be responsible for his death. Investigators verified that the note had been written by him, found nothing suspicious, and did not hold an inquest. But the official conclusion did not stop the rumors. Some Coleman residents remembered hearing Kathryn's threats against her husband. Others questioned how quickly he had been buried or claimed that he could not have written that note. There were even rumors that Kathryn was involved with the coroner. None of those suspicions were proven, but the gossip became so intense that Kathryn left Coleman and returned to her mother and stepfather's farm near Paradise, Texas. She had escaped prosecution, but she could not escape the reputation forming around her. Thorne's death gave Kathryn means to reinvent herself. She sold the property, timberland, and the cafe. With the money, she purchased a car, assembled a new wardrobe, stayed in expensive hotels, and traveled between Oklahoma City and Fort Worth. She worked for a time as a manicurist, but the nightlife surrounding her was far more important than the occupation. Kathryn spent her evenings in jazz clubs, speakeasies, and other establishments frequented by bootleggers and the underworld figures. She also continued attracting police attention. In Oklahoma City, Kathryn was suspected of helping lure a jewelry salesman to a remote location where two men beat and robbed him. She was arrested as an accessory but released because investigators lacked the evidence. In November 1929, she was arrested for shoplifting in Fort Worth and gave police the name Dolores Whitney. That charge was eventually dropped. Each encounter taught Kathryn something important. She learned how to use aliases, how to remain silent, and how difficult it could be for authorities to make accusations stick without evidence. Her family was already connected to a bootlegging trade. Her mother, Ora, and stepfather, Robert Boss Shannon, transported and manufactured illegal liquor from their farm near Paradise. Shannon also allowed fugitives to hide on the property for a price. Kathryn, therefore, had more than underworld acquaintances. She had access to a family refuge where criminals could disappear when a job went wrong. By 1930, she was romantically involved with bootlegger Little Steve, Stevens. Kathryn was no longer standing at the edge of the criminal world. She had become part of it. During the summer of 1930, Kathryn and Little Steve were spending an evening at a fashionable supper club in Fort Worth. Kathryn arrived wearing a fitted silk gown, diamond jewelry, and a fur cape. While the couple ate and spoke with the people they knew, they encountered another bootlegger named George Kelly. Kelly had recently been released from the Leavenworth Penitentiary after serving time for violating liquor laws. He was already known as an experienced smuggler and an exceptional driver. It was not the first time that Kathryn had seen him. While Kelly was imprisoned at Leavenworth, Kathryn had visited a family member at the penitentiary. The two were introduced and exchanged several letters afterward, although the correspondence eventually ended. Now they were meeting again. Little Steve already knew Kelly and believed he might be useful to his growing bootleg operation. He suggested that the two men later meet to discuss working together. Before they separated, Kelly looked towards Kathryn. She returned his attention. It appeared to be nothing more than a brief exchange between two people who had met before. But Kathryn had spent years preparing herself for this moment. She understood bootlegging, knew how to move through the underworld, and had family connections that could shelter criminals from the law. George Kelly entered Kathryn's life, but crime had arrived long before he did. Thank you for taking the time to watch and like this video and subscribing to the channel. If you would like to further support the Eclectic Historical Society, you can join our Patreon and pick up some merch at our store, eclectichistoricalsociety.com. With that being said, this is the Eclectic Historical Society, and remember, history is lost if it isn't repeated.